is Antony Sammeroff, and he's a you could start. You could come up. The mental health professional, podcaster, economics journalist, best known for his book Universal Basic Income: For and Against. And if we think about healthcare in terms of economic incentives, and it might change the way we think about healthcare. So Antony is going to give us a presentation called The Medical Mafia.
If possible. Thank you. Okay, so the talk is called The Medical Mafia, and I left it to the last minute to choose exact topics because I like to talk about what I feel enthusiastic about, and if I'd written it a couple of months ago, it would have been dead. So I think the thing I want to talk about today is we want to have these or we think, you guys probably don't, but we're meant to have these checks and balances when it comes to the kind of substances that we put in our body that profoundly affect our health, cause heart attacks and things like that. You have a manufacturer, and you have a regulator, and you have medical journals, and these are supposed to form some sort of checks and balances so that treatments that shouldn't get through the net don't get through the net, and ones that are effective get well known and disseminated. I'm calling it the medical mafia because I want to talk a little bit about how everyone that's meant to form a check and balance against each other are all on the same side, and they're there to deliver your money to the manufacturers of into their own pockets. And why that is maybe a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. So who here has heard of or remembers Vioxx? The Vioxx scandal? Okay, not most of you. Vioxx probably was the biggest drug scandal in America up until this opiate epidemic. It was an anti-inflammatory drug that was marketed on the basis that it was safer than already existing alternatives. There was generic anti-inflammatory drugs available that cost a fraction of what Vioxx cost. But when Vioxx hit the market, this is the next best thing, you need to get your doctor to prescribe you Vioxx, even though it's, several times more expensive than anti-inflammatory drugs, right? It turned out to be a lot more dangerous. 140,000 people had heart attacks because of Vioxx, and 60,000 people died, right? For a drug that was marketed as being safer. Not only that, but both the New England Journal of Medicine and the Journal of the American Medical Association both published papers, two of the most respected medical journals, saying, this is great, this is safer than other anti-inflammatory drugs, you should get it. And the interesting thing is, yes, the manufacturer cooked the data, but if you went to the raw data, you could find it. Other people went into the data and said, this is what they've submitted to the regulator, what they've submitted to the journal is misleading, right? At best, it's misleading. It might be a downright lie, okay? So other people noticed that Vioxx is likely to cause heart attacks, and there was a spokesperson for the New England Journal of Medicine, a doctor phoned up begging them to change the article because it was misleading, and said more or less, we can't police every claim that we make in our journal, right? They refused to change the article, even though it was known that Vioxx would was likely to cause heart attacks. And I'm going to come back to why that might have been in a second. The regulator, Dr. David Graham at the FDA, he kind of fought the FDA on it and said you shouldn't really be approving this drug, and he was told to basically shut his mouth because the pharmaceutical industry is the FDA's client, basically. He was more or less told that. So when he tried to make the scientific community aware of the risks of Vioxx, he was offered a promotion, which he declined because he said that he thought it was a bribe. So the interesting thing is, why did the New England Journal of Medicine refuse to update or withdraw the article? Well, they continued to sell copies of the article to Merck, who was the manufacturer of Vioxx. And Merck would post hundreds of thousands of copies of the article to doctors, so the doctors would read it and go, oh, this is great, I should prescribe this anti-inflammatory. So the New England Journal of Medicine continued to profit to the tune of somewhere between $600,000 and $900,000 for selling copies of this article. And they're meant to be the objective voice that's going to tell you where's the good science and where's the bad science in medicine. Everyone is making money from the sale of pharmaceuticals. This would go somewhere to explain why only 14% of the articles in journals are negative results, because they can't sell negative results back to the drug manufacturers to get the drug manufacturers to send them out to doctors. Most of the advertising money for journals comes from pharma. Who's lived in the US? You ever notice, if you ever go to the USA and you watch the news in the evening, you'll notice that almost all the ads are pharma ads. Now, I naively thought they were just trying to sell drugs. No. They're paying the most amount of money for advertising space during the evening news. What does the evening news not want to do? Alienate their best paid advertisers. What they're doing by buying all the ad spaces in the evening news is buying favourable coverage in the media. That's the reason why all the ads are pharma ads, right? So the reason why I kind of tell the story of Vioxx is it's kind of informative. It shows that all of the regulator and if you go online, you can very easily find that a lot of the money behind the FDA, the AMA, the CDC, comes from pharma. This is hidden in plain sight. The National Institute of Health, the CDC, and the American Medical Association own patents in vaccines that they're meant to be regulating. So in any other industry, you would say this is a conflict of interest. But for some reason, the people in the Skeptic Society that like to publish Skeptics magazine and hunt down chiropractors and homeopaths and say that they're quacks, they're just not interested. They're not interested in talking about how the CDC and the FDA have conflicts of interest for some reason. Now, I am perfectly willing to accept that a lot or even most of the treatments in alternative medicine are do nothing or quacky or right. But who are you more likely to be harmed by? Are you more likely to be harmed by a homeopath, or are you likely to be harmed by someone that prescribes you pharmaceutical medicine? Well, I mean, I've got some statistics on that actually. Let me see if I can find this for you. Let's see. Approximately 128,000 a year die in America from properly prescribed pills. In other words, they just did what their doctor said and they died. About the same number die of being prescribed the wrong dose or a drug that they're contraindicated because they've got conditions so they shouldn't take it, and or because it clashes with another medication. So you can double that, okay? So that's over 250,000 drug deaths. But not everyone who has an adverse effect from a drug dies from the drug. When you look at 840,000 hospitalizations a year in the USA from taking drugs. A total of 2.75 million adverse drug reactions a year. But the Skeptic Society want to run after acupuncturists. for some reason. They're meant to be skeptics. Okay? So, the problem I have getting the point across with a story like, I can talk to you about lots of drug scandals. In the book I'm writing, I'm going to discuss a bunch of drug scandals. But the thing is, whenever you tell people a nice story, they go, oh, well, you know, that's the kind of thing that happens from time to time, right? You know, or it's all in the past. What I'm trying to impress on people is, when you talk about the incentive structure of the system and who gets paid for what, you're talking about a problem that is systemic and continuing to happen. Vioxx is just the most conspicuous drug scandal. I'm trying to tell people that this stuff is happening all the time, whether they want to believe it or not. And it's difficult to impress that upon people. So, when you look at the history of medicine, you're basically looking at treatments that were widely prescribed and aren't done anymore. How do you know that they're not poisoning you with whatever you take now? Well, we've got a great study in the journal that says this one was really good. The same journal that told you that hormone replacement therapy for women who had menopause, or to stop them from getting a second heart attack, was going to help them. But you just poisoned them. They don't do it anymore. At least they shouldn't, right? You know, Angelina Jolie preemptively had both her breasts cut off. Preemptively. Because she had a gene that supposedly predisposed her to breast cancer. It turned out that gene, is also sometimes breast cancer preventative, and it's only when in certain circumstances that it's predicted to. Now they hardly ever, or at least they shouldn't, cut off women's breasts for breast cancer. It happens from time to time, but they usually just remove the lump. But it was widely done for ages, and now they go, oh, sorry, we butchered you in the tens or hundreds of thousands. Oopsie. Okay? You know, they used to do this frontal lobotomy for people, you know. But at the time, I'm sure they told you that they had journal articles to back it up. They gave chemo, but chemo's hardly effective anyway, but they gave chemo for cancers that it's completely ineffective for. Some of which they neither do. I could go on and on and on and on. Do you know where the term quack doctor comes from? They used to treat people with quicksilver, like mercury. And because of the southern accent, quicksilver, quack, it's quack doctor in the southern accent. And this was causing people to have Bell's palsy and things like that. But they just kept on with the mercury treatment. So that's where the term quack doctor comes from. It's interesting because it was something that was considered mainstream medicine at the time, which has now since been reversed. So, if you've got your phone, people, it's not usually polite to take your phone out during someone's presentation. But if you want to put in 7, pharmamyths.com, I've got a free ebook there, which is about 60 pages of excerpts from the full-length book that I'm writing. And you can download it for free, but you can also contribute if you want to, if that makes you happy. Sure.
How do you spell that again?
7 Pharma myths, like Pharma myths, MYTHS. And I'll say it again at the end. Download the ebook and send me some feedback. And if you're endowed enough, send me $20, whatever you can afford, because I'm using all the money to, I'm working on this 20 hours a week. You know, it's practically a job. So, and I'll also give you links to where you can see other articles and excerpts as they come out. How are we doing? Everyone paying attention? Anyone falling asleep yet? Any questions? Anything that anyone wants to add to what I've said? Okay, cool. Yeah, please.
Well, I've done a lot of schooling. And just
Do you want to come up and use the mic so people can hear you?
Just because somebody has said something in a paper
Right.
in school, that does not mean that it should be believed
Right.
or whatever. And a lot of, I've just seen a lot of times where people cut corners on papers and stuff. So it's important not to take these people too seriously.
Correct.
Digging.
Yes, and on that point, maybe I'll just talk about some of the tricks so that you guys, because like it's easy to say, oh, the journals work for pharma, but I'll talk to you about some of the tricks that they use in the medical journals to get bad data approved. If I can, I definitely can. Because this stuff is really interesting to me. Like, I'll tell you one while I'm looking for it. See when they got some antipsychotics approved, they had a group of people who were already on the drug, right? They took this group, took them all off the drug for a couple of weeks, then put half of them back on the drug and called that the group that was drugged. The other half, who were still withdrawing from the drug, they called the placebo group. And this passed the regulator. Reportedly for Prozac, hundreds of people dropped out the clinical trials because their side effects were too severe. And they just didn't count the people who dropped out of the trial as part of the final data for the drug. And this got past the regulator. So this is the problem we face. I'll give you some more of these dirty tricks. Dirty tricks. You've been playing dirty tricks again. Sorry, we can be really creepy in Scotland. Sorry, not sorry. Okay. Okay, so what you can do is you can compare your drug. Now this happens a lot, right? A lot. We're led to believe that the drug manufacturers are spending a lot of time innovating, creating new drugs, and that's why they need to charge these ridiculous monopoly prices to recoup their income. They actually hardly ever invent new compounds anymore. Almost like 80%, about 80% of the drugs that come out, what they like to do is they like to repatent a drug. So they'll change the covering of the drug, or they'll mix it with another chemical, or they'll just add a hydrogen item onto the drug, and then they'll get a new patent on the same drug, more or less, and then they'll start selling it again at monopoly prices. They'll withdraw the original drug from the market so you can't get it, and then they'll create some hype with advertising so people buy the new drug rather than a generic, which more or less does the same job. They very rarely actually introduce new compounds these days. Part of the reason for that is it used to take only 4 years to approve a drug, whereas now it takes 14 years. So the burden to take it through the regulator for 14 years makes it cost a lot of money. Now, we might actually accept that if the drugs today were safer, now that they go through 14 years of regulatory process. Actually, they withdraw, I think, about 3.3 drugs from the 3.3% of drugs from the market today, as opposed to 2.5% before they increased the amount of time it takes from 4 years to 14 years. So it takes a lot more longer, it costs a lot more money, but the drugs aren't any safer. So what they like to do is, rather than compare the drug to an existing therapy which does the same job, they compare it to a placebo. And they go, oh, here's our new anti-inflammatory drug, you should really get it, it's awesome and new. Because it's new, it must be better, right? But if they compared it to the existing therapies, people would say, this confers no advantage, right? Sometimes they treat side effects, they treat the side effects for the people who are taking the drug, and then they say, well, it doesn't seem to create many side effects, and that will get into the medical journals, and that will get past the regulator. They can only use data for people who did well in the product and exclude data. I talked about that reportedly with Prozac. And then what they can do is they can, say, take a demographic that's young and healthy, and say, well, they did really good on the drug, but then they start prescribing the drug to old people or people with contraindications, or people with comorbidities and stuff. Like, for example, the COVID vaccine. Like, so this now can't go on YouTube, by the way. If you mention the COVID vaccine, YouTube will take it down. But yeah, I mean, they did clinical trials. I don't know all the details about why the trials on the COVID jab were so bad, but they weren't good science. one of the things is they did it on young, healthy people, and they said, yeah, sure, fucking give the vaccine to kids, give it to old people, yeah, whatever. So they generalized from the wrong demographics. You can run a bunch of studies on your drug and then just cherry pick the studies that did well and submit those to the regulator. So you take 2 studies where the drug seemed to come out well and did better than a placebo, and you submit those to the regulator. But there's a bunch of other studies that say otherwise. And I believe in some of the Scandinavian countries you need to submit all of the studies to the regulator. So you just bury the studies that don't show that the drug goes well, and you say it's your intellectual property. You just say that's proprietary information. So you never let the public see the studies where the drug doesn't do well. And you can tinker with the doses when it's interesting, because see, whenever they compare 2 drugs to each other, the manufacturer of the drug that funded the study, their study always comes up on top. It always comes out better. It's interesting that. It's like ubiquitous. It's amazing. So what you can do is you can tinker with the doses. So you give the group on your drug slightly more of it, or you give the other people on the drug too much of the drug, and then they have more side effects or whatever. And this gets past the regulator. I already told you about the antipsychotics. That's one of the worst cases I've ever seen before. Sometimes when the drug's doing well, they end the study early, and they go, well, look, the data looks like, people are doing really well on the drug. But actually, if you kept on the study going for another couple of months, they might not be doing so well. And that happens quite a lot. And if if you take, say, the vaccine schedule in the USA, the CDC vaccine schedule with 75 vaccines on it, the CDC has never done a safety study for synergistic reactions between the vaccines. They claim to safety study them individually. Even when you look at that, it's not what you would typically understand to be a safety study. Usually when they safety test pharmaceutical drugs, they do it against a placebo. They do not do that with vaccines. They have never safety tested the vaccines against a placebo, ever. What they'll either do is they'll take another vaccine and compare the 2 groups for the approved vaccine against the current vaccine, which is not a placebo, or they'll shoot the placebo group up with the adjuvants, which means the heavy metals, the detergent, all the other chemicals they put in vaccines. And which is really interesting, because see, if you say anything critical of vaccines, people say you're anti-science. And I'm saying, no, I'm very pro-science. I would like you to do a controlled placebo test on the vaccines. Because see, if you were saying that it's the adjuvants that are causing harm, it's the tiny bit of aluminium that they put in there to make your immune system go ape, right? I'm telling you that it's that's harming people. I'm not worried about the attenuated virus. I'm not worried about it. It's the adjuvants I'm worried about. It's the accumulation of a little bit of mercury 75 times that I'm worried about. You're not safety testing for that. It's unethical. It's unethical not to vaccinate people, so we can't have a control group. That's what they'll tell you. Excuse me, you're meant to prove that it's unethical. You're meant to prove that it's safe. You can't assume that it's safe and then say it's unethical not to vaccinate people. And then on that point, there's already 800,000 completely unvaccinated Americans. It's very easy. All you do is you take 100,000 unvaccinated Americans, you measure the rates of chronic disease. What age do they typically die at? How many of them have heart attacks? How many of them have diabetes? How many of them have asthma? How many of them had childhood asthma? And then you compare it to 100,000, you age adjust the results, 100,000 Americans that received the full vaccine schedule, and just compare their health outcomes. The CDC refused to do the study comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated populations. In 1986, when the Reagan administration passed a law saying that you could not sue vaccine manufacturer for causing injury because Fauci, quote, vaccines are inherently unsafe, back in 1986, right? They granted immunity against prosecution to vaccine manufacturers. In that bill, it says that the CDC must produce a report on the safety of the vaccine schedule every 2 years. So by now, they should have produced this report approximately 24 times, 21, 20-something times. How many times do you think that they've produced the report? 0. Not once. Bills have gone before Congress to demand that they produce the report, and they always get shot down. I wonder why. I wonder if they're afraid what they might find out. 1989 is a red line year where all of these diseases that used to be rare, your chronic fatigue, colitis, a lot of digestive issues started to become more prevalent. Between 1986 and 1989, knowing they couldn't get sued, every pharma company tried to get as many vaccines put in the schedule. In the UK, they don't give the chickenpox vaccine because they say it increases your risk of shingles later in life, which is more damaging than chickenpox. That's what our government tells us. But the US government's still happy to give people the chickenpox vaccine. Make what you will of that. So that alone should raise some eyebrows. Okay, I've gone a little bit off topic, but you can never get enough talking about vaccinations to a population that is interested in information about it. Because it's just like, the more you find out about it, the more shocked you'd be. I'm very pro-science. Just do the frickin' study. Just do the study, please. Just compare them to a placebo, please. Just check the whole vaccine schedule for synergistic reactions. Just do the study comparing long-term health outcomes of vaccinated and unvaccinated populations. If you're so sure that the vaccines are helpful, you should have no problem doing the study, because you'll shut up conspiracy theorists. Okay, but I'm anti-science. So, one part of the medical mafia is that everyone who's involved in regular... Does anyone want to comment? Does anyone want to add anything? Does anyone want to ask a question? Please.
I have a question. Having all this information, what do we do with it? What's the solution? Do we just avoid all pharmaceuticals or create some other system? Or what we do?
Yeah. First of all, go to 7pharmamyths.com and download the free ebook, because I do talk a little bit about that. What we can do, and I'm going to continue doing that. The final book should have a bunch of different ways to divest from the mainstream healthcare system, and get out of insurance, get into crowdfunding healthcare instead, peer funding healthcare instead, and also I like to look at the human organism as a biological system that has needs, right? A pharmaceutical can, the health of your body is dependent on the health of your tissues, which is dependent on the health of your cells. Because a pharmaceutical drug has no nutritional elements in it, how can it help you build healthy cells? So I talk in the book and the booklet about the needs, the needs that our body has, and how to meet those needs so that you can build healthy tissues, and then you ought not to use drugs. I'm never saying that there's no place for drugs. There may be, but it would be maybe to alleviate the symptoms and to comfort the patient while you attend to the underlying cellular condition of the body. So make sure, so there's all the nutrients you need, and then there's things that you should know about, like if you know anyone who needs a hip or a shoulder or any joint replacement, hydrolyzed collagen, for example, lots of people take that for a few months and they just don't need hip or shoulder replacements anymore. It's great for arthritis, because the scientists are clever, and what they did was, collagen makes up all the structures of our tissues, but you can eat chicken feet, but it's hard to absorb. So the scientists broke it down into the smallest peptides that are super bioabsorbable, and then your body just goes, okay, thank you for the collagen, I can get to rebuilding my cartilage and my bones and stuff like that. So as this medical model becomes more popular, we'll see more kind of innovations that like giving the body the building blocks of what it needs. Chlorella has all of your essential amino acids in it. It's extremely bioavailable, and it can bond with particles that you don't want in there. You know, learn to breathe properly, like into the bottom bulbs of your lungs. Nothing leaves the body without water and oxygen. You need oxygen to bond to carbon, nitrogen, which in ammonia, urea, the waste products of our body. So if you can afford it, you can go into a hyperbaric chamber, you get the oxygen in your body, it bonds to your body's waste and takes them out through the urine. Drink lots of water. So the main way that I think about it and I talk about it in my writing is attending to the body's needs, physiological, and there's the emotional and psychological needs as well. Very, very important question. Thank you. We should be talking about solutions, and it's very bad to ever present someone with a problem without talking about a solution. So, all I'd say is the next step is get the booklet. If you need reminding, I'll tell you afterwards, because that will take us to next steps, and I'm still improving upon the booklet. Hello, thank you.
Does the book talk about like what the proper diet we should be eating? It looks like the diet structure that we have.
I am trying not to be too prescriptive. It doesn't say it in the book. I'll tell you what not to eat, right? Personally, I think that the whole foods, plant-based diet seems to be absolutely excellent, and most people perform well in it. Nowadays, like, people seem to be doing well in keto or carnivore. I don't know how long that's going to last. I'm going to watch, because it seems to go against everything that I learned from decades, but I'm watching, okay? If you avoid the main hand grenades, which are like processed sugar, if you do eat meat, don't eat deli meats, don't eat processed meats. They put chemicals in them that are extremely harmful for you. Go and get your animal products from a butcher or a fishmonger. You know, again, white flour. The thing is, I don't know how bad the wheat that our great-grandparents used to eat is. But the wheat that people are eating now, in addition to the pesticides that are being sprayed on them, the pesticides don't just kill pests, they kill the microbiome, the microorganisms that make up your digestive system, and then you can't digest your food properly. But they also kill the microorganisms in the soil, which are meant to pre-digest minerals so that plants can absorb the minerals. So the mineral content is depleted as well. So there are very good reasons to buy organic produce. You don't want the pesticides. Go on. Yes, please.
Step through the portal.